Healing your life, the liberation from psychological suffering. I think most of us are interested in what healing is. We recognize there's nothing wrong with existence. It does not require healing. We're manifestations of existence. And at some level, of course, we are what is, and that is nature itself. Nature, of course, is a process, and it's ever well, ever whole, and nothing is wrong with it. However, we come to recognize that life is constructed with challenges, and I think it's not surprising that we infer that the universe, the infinite being that is life, is on an adventure, and that adventure is in the field of duality. It is, of course, in the game of life, and there is a cat and mouse element in existence. When we think about the game of life, we don't suggest that life is frivolous and less than important, but we realize that there are always tensions, and we are always navigating between various conditions, for example, the sense of well-being and perhaps the sense of not being well, the sense of threat and the sense of being safe. This is the life experience, and indeed we do experience emotional wounds in the process of growing up, and we also are acculturated. We speak to people, and we want to be effective with others, and we use that those indicators to organize ourself, our sense of self, and our sense of the world. So we are in fact conditioned, and we have organized ourselves socially to a great extent, and as we mature, sometimes it's necessary for us to let go of that type of conditioning. So that has some relationship to psychological suffering, because you can get stuck in a pattern during the maturation process. I think Abraham Maslow indicated that this was the case. He posited a very interesting pyramid model, in which the bottom of it was some of the basic needs that are necessary, and then from there on the need for safety, and from then on the need to belong, and from then on the need to believe in yourself and the universe, and we'll discuss that a little further. And then actually the actualization phase, when those needs are met, the opportunity to express ourselves and, well, reach our potential is provided. What holds us off from achieving this actualization level? Fixations. And so we talk about the liberation from psychological suffering, acknowledging that there is restraint there, and that restraint can come directly from emotional wounds. Frustrations as a young person. When a need is not met, there tends to be a fixation at that level. For example, if you have a bad experience at the essential level, where shelter and food and necessary needs are not provided, there is a possibility that you will organize a world view based on that. So you'll always be living in terms of that fear, or the mind grabs onto that and won't let it go. It's a threat. And we do need to let that go. Yes, it is important that we provide ourselves shelter, but the terror of it, or the assumption, the expectation that we will not be sheltered, that we are at risk of not having enough food and enough shelter, produces the fixation. That fixation comes as a defense. We defend ourselves, and we actually are living in terms of that, and we don't necessarily move on. Of course, there is always moving on. We go to the next level, and the sense of safety. Now, folks that have emotional wounds at this level have a sense of being vulnerable, and they likely experienced vulnerability as a youngster. And all of us have this inherent sense of vulnerability. We're talking now about an emotional wound, about a frustration that produces a fear response, and the mind then holds on to it, trying to defend us, trying to keep us alive. Survival mechanisms kick in, and we have some distortion in perception. We have a tendency to feel threatened, that we're not safe. And folks that have that type of emotional wound, again, will have, phobias, for example, and irrational anxiety, not feeling safe. Generally, with the vulnerability schema, it also can deal with getting hurt, and indeed, people that are afraid of getting hurt, for example, do have a tendency to draw that reality towards them. Why? It's in consciousness, as you have believed. They say in the New Testament, so be it done unto you. Well, that's the generative nature of consciousness, and consciousness is, in fact, producing personal reality, and so it is generative. The other element is belonging. When we do not have a sense of belonging, there is certainly an insecurity about belonging. We do. It's a need. We need to belong. And, of course, the inherent truth of the matter is that we, of course, belong. We are manifestations of nature operating in the field of nature. We are what we're looking at. And that is a message, a very important message that actually comes with greater realizations. We recognize that each of us is a holon, a microcosm of the whole. And we can talk further about that in these coming videos. We'll certainly touch on that. And it has a great deal to do excuse me, with non-duality. It has a lot to do with love. Yes, love. Why? Because love is the binding factor between the subject and object relationship. And we're going to talk further about that for sure. Then we go further, and Maslow posited the idea that we must believe in ourselves, self-esteem, and that self-esteem, esteeming self. Now, what is the self? We come to recognize that the self is not on, the self must be in a context. In other words, you do not exist outside of context. It always takes two. One thing without another does not exist. So we recognize that when we talk about self-esteem, we need to also believe in what's objective to us besides what's subjective to us. They're both us. We're going to talk further about that, so it's going to be much clearer. There is no you without an environment. We need to give real consideration to that. In other words, the narrow range of our self-identification, what we choose and what we prefer, and our behaviors is a very small spectrum in what we are. You take breath, for example, you realize it must integrate into the environment. No environment, no you. It's one seamless, unified field, and that's the love factor. There's language that points to that. We are actually not local. In other words, we're not in a skin bag. That's not us. Well, only, of course, that element has to be understood, but that skin bag is in an environment, and the two allow for the singularity of existence, and that existence, that relationship is like positive and negative, left and right. It's one thing, and this has to do with trusting life, and it also has to do with actualization, because we must trust and let go to allow ourselves to actualize. We're in a mystery, so what we are unfolds. And yes, we have the ability to direct to some extent, but we are certainly in the mystery of being, and we are in fact unfolding, evolving, and that's what's going on. Pardon the noise. So we have been talking about why we use the term liberation from psychological suffering, and we are organizing it rather than a resolution. We're not necessarily resolving a problem. We are transcending issues, and the growth process in a mindfulness-based anxiety reduction is a process that's integral, and I think we have to acknowledge the work of Ken Wilber, who organized integral theory. He said it very beautifully. The maturation process is a process of inclusion and transcendence. So we include our emotional wounds, we include the very difficult aspects of existence, life and death, health and illness, happiness and distress. These need to be integrated, accepted, and recognizing that that's the aspect of ourselves. We are nature itself. If we want to be whole, we'll need all the cards. So the inclusion of all the cards, so to speak, the radical acceptance of life is very closely associated with the maturation process, and the maturation process is very closely associated with the liberation from psychological suffering. Wisdom heals us. So our next video will be a discussion about the authenticity mode, and these are modalities. Modalities are states of being. They have a particular value system, a perspective, self-concept, worldview. The intellect is, of course, engaged with that. It has particular feelings in a particular mode state. And we're going to talk about that. It's very associated, if you will, with a deck of cards. For example, even the tarot. These are various motifs, and they constitute the entirety of what is possible for us. They try to represent that. And each card would be a particular perspective, and we're going to talk about the authenticity mode state. Thanks for tuning in. Tune into the next video.